Welcome everyone to a new episode of Marketing Blueprint. We have more and more followers every week. A big thank you everyone for your participation. I think the key of Marketing Blueprint success is the quality of the guests we bring on stage here. So I'm super thrilled today to welcome yet another marketing leader with Lisa Vecchio, who is joining the CMO interview series. Lisa, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here and appreciate the kind intro.
Well, we're on season 2 of Marketing Blueprint, and we started having a small tradition, which is to start with a background review of who it is you are, what it is you've done. I'm trying to be as thorough as possible, but I may miss a few things. So if you feel I'm missing a few elements, feel free to correct me or fill the gaps afterwards. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Perfect. So you started your career at Forrester, which is a company I happen to know quite a bit because of another podcast I'm running. At the time, you were doing product marketing and events coordination. You've had multiple roles at another company called 𝗪𝗵𝗁, where you apparently halfway in your job there, you've decided to relocate to Australia, which sounds like a bold move. We may want to talk about a little today. Then you came back to the UK as director of marketing. Then you did brand PR and campaigns at Expedia, marketing director at Hootsuite, and VP global marketing at 𝗪𝗵𝗁. That's quite a journey. Is that correct? Did I miss something important here?
You more or less covered it. There was another startup thrown in there after the first one when I moved back to the UK. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, but I've been enjoying it.
Well, it looks like, when I was trying to work on your background, I feel like you've touched many, many aspects of marketing. Just naming a few, I mentioned you did product marketing, you did events, you did PR, you did brand, you did campaigns, you worked on demand gen, you even had partners at some point, partners marketing at some point in your career. Is that why you ended up in a leadership position? Is this 360 degrees of marketing like one of the key elements that justify why you are a leader today, or is it not related?
I think it's spot on. Being a generalist, being a 360 marketing leader, I like to say that now I've got that helicopter view, right? Especially as you're, entering larger marketing organizations where you've got lots of different teams and disciplines. Having been in many of those disciplines or hired for those disciplines, now I kind of have that holistic view of how they need to operate as one unified go-to-market. So it's something I'm proud of, rather than shying away from and going, oh yeah, I've tried lots of stuff on for size. It's one of the things I actually recommend is, if you're not going to go deep in a discipline, trying everything on for size sets you up as a leader, because you have more perspective of how marketing as an ecosystem operates, because it is complex, it is multidiscipline. You can't be an expert in everything, but it certainly helps to have knowledge across.
So that's probably the first nugget here. Being able to touch multiple things gives you the keys to climbing that marketing ladder. But besides the career element, beside the career aspect, how does it help you on a daily basis, being a marketing leader who has done events, who has done demand gen, who's worked for PR and brand, who's had product marketing, which especially you've been working in the SaaS industry, product marketing is all over the place. How is that helpful on a daily basis once you are a leader to have that background? What advantage do you get from that?
I think that's a really great question, because I think it gives you a perspective, as you're planning, as you're trying to create a strategy. It's really useful to blend kind of the qualitative and the hands-on and the experience you've had with kind of the data-driven decisions you need to make, because some of it is intuition, some of it's also like from learned experience. I think trying all that on for size allows you to have different stakeholder engagements as well. So it helps you kind of problem solve with colleagues in different ways. If you're working in a product marketing role, your biggest stakeholders will be product teams. And so thinking about how you can influence the product roadmap, for example. When you're in more of a field marketing role, you're working closely with sales. And so the level of kind of influence you have there as your day-to-day job is actually, problem solving, business planning, figure out how you're going to hit your revenue goals. So I think it's tools in your toolbox, right, that you can pull from at different times of need.
Beside the tools, how do you feel about communication? You and I have a somehow similar background in the sense that we've tried multiple industries, we've tried multiple roles, and we've been hands-on for quite a fair part of our marketing journey. And one thing I find is, having done events in the past, having managed the Google Ads interface, having done PR, brand, and campaign, I feel I have better communication with my team because I understand what they're going through. I understand the obstacles they face, and I don't suffer too much from the Dunning-Kruger effect, that says that when you don't really know something, you feel like you're a top expert. Everything is super simple. But once you start digging into it, you realize, well, marketing is not just glitter and fun parties. There's actually complexity and processes and everything. Do you feel that gives you a different edge when it comes to communicating with your team and being able to understand their needs and their problems as well?
I'd say absolutely, but I think it speaks to who you are as a leader and likely who I am as a leader as well, where we're not, no matter how far up the pole you go, I'm still someone who leads with transparency, who's empathetic, who I say to my team, I don't want to be the one standing between you and, finishing your evening or your weekend, like very, very approachable in that sense. And I think because I understand, I've done it before, right? I can empathize with their day job, that I'm not going to leave them hanging. There's also a level of accountability that I then can expect on that team because I know what good should look like, right? And so one of my other values is, there is no status quo. So I'll also then ask good questions to them, push them to think beyond boundaries, because I also understand what it takes to throw a great event or to put a campaign together end to end and make sure we left no stone unturned. So maybe it's a blessing and a curse from their perspective. I don't know. But from my perspective, I can empathize with them. If I need to jump in, I will. I can't say today, if you ask me to be hands-on to run a Google Ads campaign, then I would be any more effective than someone who's become a subject matter expert that I've hired for the job. So I'm also going to trust and allow them to get their job done, right? That's what I've hired them for. But I know what the end goal needs to be, right? And what good should look like. And I think because of that learned experience, probably much more forgiving as well, in that sense, than perhaps if you just were hoping you click your fingers and teams magically, make everything perfect.
You just need to do it. How many times as marketers do we hear other departments telling us you just need to do that? Because marketing always sounds easy when you're not in it. All right, I will want to dwell to dive a little bit deeper into the leadership part of things. But before that, let's just talk about marketing. Why marketing? Was it a dream job as a kid for you? Did you dream of becoming VP of marketing for some renowned company, or did it just happen this way?
So I'd love to say it just happened, but actually I more often say that I'm actually a marketer by design. And I say that because I was very thoughtful, maybe too thoughtful. I don't know. My younger self, if I could be a bit more forgiving. I grew up in the States, university is expensive. You get much more of a pressure culture, I think, to kind of climb that ladder and be successful. And when I went to university, because we don't choose our subject, in A levels like you do in where I currently live in the UK. In the US, you often do that when you go to university. And so I remember sitting down in the office and actually going through the manual, going like, I want to pick the right major because I have to do this in 4 years. I have to get a good job when I come out. And then I need to just, have my career kind of go up that ladder. I'm not saying that's the correct way to think, again, if I could be more forgiving to my younger self, but I wrote down a couple of things that I thought I was naturally skilled at. And that the first one was storytelling. So as a child, I would, tell stories with my childhood best friend. I'd say I wanted to be a writer and an author. And I just love when I have even a room of people, being able to kind of engage them in a narrative. The second was around influencing and negotiating. So my parents used to say, "Oh, you're going to be a lawyer, or you're going to be a salesperson, because you're always just trying to kind of convince people of your challenge, whatever." And then the third one was actually about of organizing events and parties and bringing people together. Like, I'm the coordinator of the group. And I put those things down on paper. And as I'm going through the course syllabus, I actually came across PR and communications. And I'm like, this is event planning. This is PR is all about influence and telling stories. And that actually led me down a path of taking a communications degree. And then I tried a lot of things on for size, which is probably now why I'm so, free thinking in, okay, well, let's try different industries, different, scaling sizes, because I did all that really early on, and it helped me go, wow, this is such a big, marketing is this big beast, right? And you're not just going to do one thing. So to answer your question, it was deliberate. And I remember sitting in a class, probably one of my later years in university, and they had old students coming back who were marketing executives, or they were VPs or whatever. And I just thought, one day I want to be that person. I want to be the person coming back into the room to teach younger people on how to kind of have a successful career. So yeah, it was deliberate, and I'm kind of, I put a lot of energy into kind of figuring it out and trying things on for size.
So I've interviewed quite a few marketing leaders on that podcast, and I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe you're the first one to tell me that it was deliberate. Most people tell me it just happened this way. It personally just happened this way as well. Started as a web designer. I had no plan of doing marketing, but life happened. But then it's interesting that you say it was deliberate, because you started your career with Forrester. For anyone working in the SaaS industry, anyone working in contact center, anyone working in telephony, Forrester is super famous. But as a fresh grad, I would assume Forrester is probably not something that the general public is familiar with. So why did you pick Forrester specifically? And again, was it just it happened this way, or was there really a plan here? And how did this first job actually influence the rest of your career? Is it just one milestone on the way, or was it actually a preset milestone to go to that next place? How did that work out?
So Forrester was actually through a grad scheme. So to be transparent there, and it was deliberate. So I've always, you mentioned my travels over to Australia when I was with Wiley for that 8.5 year period. And since I was young, I'd always been infatuated with the UK. As an American, my grandmother was British. And when I was 13 years old, I said, "Dad, take me to England. I really want to go there." And he said, "Save your money and I'll take you." And I did. I had $500 ready to go. And I was like, please, please, please. So I knew from a young age that I wanted to spend time abroad. And I really valued other cultures and international cultural things. And I wanted to build a global career. Really wanted to make sure that I was working for global businesses that would give me an opportunity to go to places, to travel for my job. And so when I graduated university, I was dead set on moving to the UK. And I emailed people in my network, and everyone's going, "You're a grad, you're 22. No company is going to sponsor you because that's expensive, and we don't know if you're good yet," right? Because I've just had internships. And I found a program called the 𝗪𝗶𝗁 program. And the 𝗪𝗶𝗁 program is an exchange between postgraduates in the UK that send them to New York, and US graduates who have at least 1 to 2 years of work experience already. And so what it is it's a program where you get a postgraduate degree. Mine was actually, it's changed now, but from Cambridge at the time, in international business. They put you in a work experience for a year where you get paid an annual stipend and your living expenses are paid for. So for a year, I came over, and this program, well, probably 90% of the people were working at big investment banks and front office and back office. I got one of the 2 marketing jobs that I said, I'm only coming if it's in marketing, because I've done all of that stuff beforehand. And I ended up in this role with Forrester. And just a little anecdote, I had a friend visiting from the States over the weekend, and it was her first time to London. And the first time she saw Tower Bridge, she was like, "Wow, can you actually go up there?" And I said, "I planned a dinner actually across the top of Tower Bridge when I was an intern with Forrester." And she went, who gets to say when they were 19, they held a dinner at the top of Tower Bridge? And so, it was just a fantastic experience working. It was one of their executive programs that I was managing the event schedule for, and then product marketing for. And so I ended up there by accident, right? I was placed there. I didn't get to necessarily select it. They selected me. And when I came back to the US after my visa expired, I didn't want to move to Boston, where Forrester was headquartered. All my friends were in New York. And so for me, it was, how do I get a job back in New York where I can stay with my network? But yeah, that's kind of what led me down that path. But when your question was, how did that maybe start as a jumping off point for future career decisions? The fact that I had that international experience so early on in my CV was very, very, very valuable. And also the ability to work with senior stakeholders, right? Because I was working with CIOs of like the Fortune 50 companies of the world, hosting events for them. And so my level of kind of, I guess, professionalism in the workplace was really had to step up at an early stage as well to be around senior executives.
So something I'd like to tell me if I get this wrong or not, but listening to you, I feel like some of your success is coming from a couple of things. First, you don't seem to be afraid of anything. Traveling the world, relocating, trying new things can be scary for many people, but it seems it's kind of the opposite for you. It
was scary for me too. It was scary for me too. We can't pretend like these things are easy.
But you push yourself. That becomes a goal, and you push your own limit. And the other thing is, you are not necessarily at the time in a position to make the calls, but you still manage to be somehow picky because you know what it is you want. Everyone is going into investment banking, but you're clear on the fact that I want to travel, I want to go to the UK, but I'm going to do it if I get the marketing position, and there are only two. So is being a little bit picky, even though you're not necessarily in a position of strength at the beginning of your career, also something that can be a real asset for climbing that ladder?
Yeah, I think, look, times are tough, transparently right now, I'm in between roles, and I'm still, I think, approaching it with the same level of rigor of where do I want to go? What's important to me? How do I not sacrifice my values? You learn very quickly, you don't chase the money, you chase good people, good culture, all of that. And I think saying no and putting boundaries up, and even at the risk of maybe it taking a little bit longer, not everyone, has the luxury to do that. But for me, it was staying in New Jersey and working, finding some average marketing executive role in my local community, or taking a risk that was really, really scary, but I knew would lead me on this path. And, I have to give credit to my parents who thought I was crazy. Like, if anyone is interested in the program, it's called the 𝗪𝗶𝗁 program, and it's still running today. And they do actual postgraduate degrees now, and mini MBAs and things like that. But they were like, what is this? I've never heard of this before. We're going to give them our money, and you're just going to get on a plane and go. So I think I had to put a little trust. It was scary, but I'm glad I had the support from my family to take a risk. Do you know what? You can always go home. You can always quit your job. You can always start over if it doesn't work out, right? But you don't ask, you don't get. And I think that's going to be another reoccurring theme, because you've got to put your hand up for these things. If you don't put your hand up, people aren't necessarily going to come knocking on your door.
I love absolutely everything you're saying here. I had very similar experiences earlier in my career. When I was still studying, getting ready for a master degree, I had that beautiful opportunity to go to Scotland. Everything paid for, living cost, even the school was paid for. I didn't have to pay a single dollar, but I rejected the offer because I really wanted to go to Hong Kong. So I had to convince my parents, same thing, that were thinking I was completely crazy. I had to move all the way to Hong Kong to start my career. And that's probably the best choice I've made in my life, because being international, pushing the boundaries, doing the crazy stuff that are scary is probably the best way to get where you want to go. You mentioned earlier that you need to be a little bit forgiving to your younger self. If you had a time machine now, and you could actually whisper in the ear of your younger self, what would you be telling yourself? What are the mistakes you've made that you probably would be able to avoid if you had the wisdom you have today, years back?
That's a lovely question, because I'm still quite proud of that person for taking those risks, for going, even though it was scary. I'd probably where I wasn't strong enough was maybe negotiating things like my salary and my package and stuff for relocation. A few times I would say, there you're asking, you can't ask for everything, but I've made a lot of friends around the world, and I've spent a lot of time trying to reconnect with my family. I think some of the things that I wish was that I found a way to be more connected with everyone and the people. I don't know if you can appreciate this. You build all these kind of mini lives when you move all over the world. And then as you get older, you kind of realize, wow, it's a lot, and you wish you could take yourself back in time because you never kind of relive those experiences in the same way. So that's not so much career advice. It's just kind of more appreciating the moments you have while you have them, because things move really fast.
Well, another thing that appeared to be obvious looking at your background is you've been doing multiple jobs within marketing. You've had multiple locations around the world, but you've also worked in multiple industries. Many successful marketers start their career in one industry and build it up for the next 20 years. You've actually shifted from one industry to the other. Probably looking at your background, doing a little bit of B2B here, a little bit of B2C there, maybe also something in between. Was that a good move? Was it deliberate as well? And is it a good thing or a bad thing when you're in the role? And let me just explain why I'm saying this. From my perspective, I've done many industry. I see this as a fantastic thing because you can move from one job to the other. You have that fresh eyes and you have something that others don't necessarily have. On the downside, however, you are competing with people who've been in the same industry for 20 years and you don't necessarily have the codes and the knowledge and the processes. Do you think that was a smart move? Is it something you would recommend other people to do? And how did that help your own career?
So I think I agree. I think having different experiences gives different perspective, and you can come in as an outsider and kind of challenge the status quo. At the same time, especially in the challenging market that we're in right now, businesses are very risk averse and they want apples for apples. There's no kind of let's take that experience that's very transferable. Not right now, at least in where we are. I would say it's all circumstantial. So, when I moved back to New York, I had an opportunity through my network to join a publishing company called 𝗪𝗶𝗹𝗪 in ed tech. That's where I spent those 8.5 years and then moved to Australia. And to be honest, initially I was like, what is B2B? Like, this is boring. Like, I think that marketing in my head as a young person was advertising, and it was B2C, and it was consumer, and it was sexy, and you were selling cool things that you see on TV. And so I didn't get, when I was doing product marketing and field marketing, that that's the crux of B2B marketing, right? And now, nearly 2 decades on, I'm a super proud B2B marketer. I'm heavily kind of involved in the B2B marketing community, and I'm a huge advocate for it. Because I think B2B can be more like B2C if we actually humanize our customers and we're creative and we have fun with our marketing. Now, when I moved to the UK, so I did that for 8.5 years. When I moved to the UK, again, it was through a recruiter network that I got an opportunity. I wanted to go to the startup world, right? I'm like, I want to work for a younger, less mature company, less bureaucracy, where I can have a bit more hands-on control. And that's where I started off as head of marketing, then director of marketing for a startup called 𝗪𝗪𝗁 in the charity space. And then I moved to a health tech company called 𝗪𝗵𝗶𝘁. In those experiences, you're the first senior marketing hire working with founders. I learned a lot about founder relationships versus working with an executive team. I built a team from the ground up. And so I felt like working in ed tech, charity tech, and health tech, I started to develop a tech for good brand for myself. And I really liked that. I liked that that was something I could sell into other companies. And then out of nowhere, I saw this opportunity for Expedia come up. And it was a maternity cover. It was only a year. And as we've kind of uncovered my passion around travel, I was like, wow, to work for travel tech, complete end of the spectrum. Let's go to one of the biggest enterprises out there. And I still stayed in B2B though, in that role. So I also then learned what it was like to work for a 40,000 person company where the kind of levels and layers and autonomy that I experienced in a startup was really, really challenged now in a big organization with lots of layers. So I'm just kind of sharing that path because it was personal decisions, circumstantial decisions that kind of allowed me to transition deliberately into the startup world, deliberately into the enterprise world because I wanted to work in travel. And then, COVID hit. And then I ended up last 5 years in this mid-market space. I realized as we kind of started the call that all of these experiences working in these individual roles, managing, building these individual teams, I now had this breadth of experience. So when I joined Hootsuite, they're a 250 million ARR company, quite large. I went, actually, I can come in for businesses that are scaling to that next level as a mature marketer who can help create efficiency in process, think about how these different teams work together, look at those different team expertises and think about, how to make the most out of them, et cetera. And then I became an integrated marketer. And an integrated marketer was about, okay, let's create the global go-to-market. How do we take this strategy and then put it into regional markets, et cetera? So I think this has come full circle in terms of the compounding experience. And I felt that most recently, that was my sweet spot, taking these scale-up companies and maturing them to sustainable growth. So basically, after my time kind of in these mid-market companies, Aircall and Hootsuite, where, I helped kind of scale their levels of maturity, I've realized I'm at a complete reset now. So, to answer your question is, it's not just necessarily one industry or one business size. I agree. Having these different experiences, now I can go into any business. And what I say is, growth to me isn't a bigger title or more budget or a bigger team size. Yes, I've managed large teams, large budgets. I've also managed and grown small teams with small budgets. And for me, I think success in marketing now is finding an organization with the challenging times we've been through over the last couple of years that values marketing, that understands what marketing's role is. And I'm going into a business to kind of be really clear on the value I can add and to work with great people and a great culture. And so regardless of, there's no specific industry or business size, it's going to be about, really believing in a product and a team that's going to help us get there.
That's something we hear more and more. New generations and even older generations post-pandemic, everyone is looking for purpose, is where everyone is looking for work-life balance. Everyone is working for something that makes sense in their life. It feels like the whole industry, generally speaking, has changed quite a bit. I see that the clock is ticking. Unfortunately, time flies. That went by pretty quickly. I have one last question for you.
Sure.
I'd love to know if you had one single piece of advice to give, fresh grads ready to start their marketing career, whether they need to be deliberate or just catch whatever opportunity is showing. What would be that one piece of advice you would give fresh grads?
I think it'd be maybe the lesson from my own learnings, which is to try lots of things on for size. You don't have to get it right the first time. And it's going to be through experience that you'll figure out what you're good at and then what to continue to double down in. So try things on for size, put your hand up, ask for things, and make sure you don't just challenge the status quo. Just don't take things for what they are, face value. Make sure that you really think about what you want out of them and how you can make marketing better wherever you go.
Well, thank you for that. Those words of wisdom, Lisa. Thank you for sharing all the insights. Love your background, how you view leadership. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you, everyone, for watching yet another episode of Marketing Blueprint. You can find Lisa directly on LinkedIn. It's within the post. If you want to find out a little bit more, just get in touch. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and see you very soon for another episode of Marketing Blueprint. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.